Good morning. So, as I was stating previously, we are recording this. So, if you don't want to be recorded on this, um, feel free to leave now or mute your microphone. This is the Partners Matter December 2024 webinar. We used to do these quite a bit, and we're going to get back to doing them. We try to talk about things that are relevant to the restaurant industry, to you guys as operators and owners of restaurants. And the most urgent thing that we have to talk about right now is the Michigan tip law, the changes that are affecting restaurants. And we'll get into why it happened, how it happened, what it's going to look like moving forward, and what you guys can do to combat this and be successful, because we have a lot of history with similar laws out west, out in Seattle, Portland, towns like that implemented these similar laws, almost 10 years ago now. I think Portland first initiated it somewhere around 2014. So we're going to go into how restaurants have successfully combat this stuff in those jurisdictions. Quick introduction for those of you guys that are maybe new to us. We're Partners Matter. We're a hospitality, technology, and consulting company. We do point of sale, web design, graphic design, email marketing. I'm Dwayne Owens. I'm the president and CEO of Partners Matter, lifelong hospitality professional, owned, operated restaurants, nightclubs, comedy clubs. Been in your shoes plenty of times. On with us is Natalie Kenda Korn. She is our general counsel. In layman's terms, she's our lawyer. She's a University of Michigan grad and a Wayne State law grad. I could go into her credentials. They're a mile long. She's the best litigator I've ever met in my life, and we're happy to have her on our team. She has done a lot of the research for this and will be available to answer some questions throughout and at the end. How we got here. And Natalie, correct me if anything I say needs to be corrected and or clarified. But we got here first through the politicians. So in 2018, there was a ballot initiative by the citizens of the state of Michigan to raise minimum wage for everybody, not only the hospitality industry, but for everybody, but specifically for the hospitality industry through the Improved Workforce Opportunity Wage Act of 2018. The politicians, it was an election cycle, they didn't want this on the ballot, is the best way of saying it. So prior to the election, they voted it into law. And Michigan has had this policy for a lot of years called sign and amend, where there's a period of time after they vote something into law that they can amend that law and still have it be part of the law. They waited till after the election and then amended this law and said, oops, we're just kidding. We don't want this to take effect for the hospitality industry. We're amending it. Mothering Justice filed suit against the Michigan Attorney General in the state of Michigan, saying that sign and amend process that has been used in Michigan for hundreds of years was unconstitutional. And in July 31st of 2024, the Michigan Supreme Court agreed with them and said that sign and amend process is unconstitutional, effectively taking all the laws that were passed using sign and amend and reverting them back to the initial way that they were passed. So the Supreme Court said you cannot sign and amend in the same legislative session. If you want to amend the law, you need to amend it in the next legislative session and vote just like you would anything else. The Supreme Court made the first effective date for this implementation February 21st, 2025. So the existing minimum wage structure ends on February 20th of next year, at the conclusion of the date, February 20th. What does that mean? This document was taken right off the Michigan Restaurant Association's website. You have the URL there. There's a lot of good information. We are good partners with the Michigan Restaurant Association. But February of 25, the minimum wage in the state of Michigan goes up to $12.48. The tipped minimum wage goes to $5.99. Okay. From that point forward, they are slowly, if you look in the right column, eliminating the tip credit. So for those of you guys who are restaurateurs and know what the tip credit is, that means restaurants pay a lower minimum wage than traditional businesses for their tipped employees because it is assumed that they are making a percentage of that minimum wage through tips. So by the time we get to the end of this in February of 2030, there is no longer a tip credit through that escalating scale that you see there. So in 26, minimum wage goes to $13.29 and server minimum wage goes to $7.97. In 27, regular minimum wage at $14.16, tipped minimum wage to $9.91. In 28, regular minimum wage to $14.97, tipped minimum wage to $11.97. And then from that point forward, the minimum wage is going to be adjusted for inflation, and the tip credit is going to go away completely. So restaurants will have to pay their tipped employees no differently than they pay anybody else. This is clearly not good news for a restaurant. Frankly, I don't believe it's good news for our tipped employees, because if we're a successful restaurateur and our restaurant is successful, most of our employees aren't making minimum wage anyways. They're making significantly more than minimum wage when you add the tips in. In the jurisdictions that this has taken effect in, the effect of this in similar laws has been a reduction in actual wages for people in the restaurant industry. And you will see how our restaurants have combat this law, and you'll see why I can state that conclusively. Natalie, is there anything I'm missing in how we got here and the effect of this law right now?
No, Dwayne, I think you did a very high level, and hello, everyone. I'm Natalie. I think you did a very thorough high level review of how we got here.
Okay. So let's talk about how have other jurisdictions combat this disaster. Okay. Oh, we're letting people into the call still. The first way almost everybody's doing it right now is dual pricing. It's a legal and compliant way to eliminate your credit card processing fees. Essentially, think of it like a gas station. In your point of sale, every menu item has a cash and a credit price. And when guests pay with credit, they're paying the higher price. When they pay with cash, they're paying the cash price. To implement this, you have two options. Either put cash and credit price on your menu, or put the credit price, the higher of the two prices, on your menu, and have a statement that says cash paying customers receive X amount of discount. Okay. This is compliant in all 50 states, and it is compliant with Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and Discover, which are really the only ones that matter. The second way restaurants have combated this is by using a service charge. It is a legal and compliant way to determine how your service charges are dispersed to your staff. So this is different than an auto gratuity, and the wording is very, very specific. If you have a 20% auto gratuity, from a legal perspective, that is a tip. And the service staff that's responsible for earning that tip is entitled to it. But many of our restaurants out west have switched to what we call a 20% service charge. And it is posted on their door. It is posted on their menus that there will be a 20% service charge added to all checks. By calling it a service charge, you are now able in your employee manuals to define how that service charge is dispersed. Maybe you keep 10%, or maybe you keep half of it, give half of it out as tips to front of the house staff, and half of it out as tips to the back of the house staff. Okay, you can divide that service charge up as an operator any way you see fit. Okay. I didn't put something on here that many of my restaurants do in California. For those of you guys not familiar with California law, the restaurants pay a percentage of their sales in a tax to the government that goes to provide health insurance for the homeless population in California. And I don't remember the exact percentage. I could look it up in one of our back of the houses. It's like 1.8% or something along those lines. Okay. Many of our restaurants in California have just added that as a service charge, 1.8% hospitality tax to the bottom. You could really easily add that to the bottom of yours also and call it a, 5% minimum wage compliance tax. Again, you'd have to disclose it on your menus. You'd have to disclose it on your doors. I don't think it's a great idea, but many of our restaurants in California do. The other way that restaurants have combated this out west is by limiting staff. You see on the screen right now our QR order and pay signs, and this is actually designed for COVID. So you see it, the Bowery in Michigan's logo on the top of these. During COVID, when you had to limit staff and limit all those things, these were super popular. But out west, they're also super popular in restaurants in jurisdictions where tipped minimum wage is high. All right. And what this allows is for a guest, these sit on the table, a guest scans the QR code, they place their order, they pay right from their own phone. And when they conclude the transaction and pay, it prints to the kitchen, prints to the bar, does all the things that you need to start preparing your food. We have restaurants out west that have switched to a dual service model where when you are greeted at the door, you are asked if you want full service or if you want self-service. And they have two sections in their restaurant. One section that is all self-service, QR order and pay, and one section that gives a full service dining experience. Again, I don't think any of us think it's the right solution for restaurants, but it's one way that they are using to combat. Where is this a good fit? I think this is a real good fit in places that are smaller footprint, fast casual, where guests also order at the counter but had limited service at the table. Well, now you can get rid of table service and guests can self-order. We're doing a lot of these in true QSR to limit line busting and that kind of stuff so that instead of having people wait in line, they can go sit at a table and scan an order. Just another way that restaurants are combating this. Online ordering. You're using zero-tipped employees and encouraging guests to order online more frequently. We've actually seen a lot of this out west. The average millennial in major cities are ordering online 12 times a week, guys. If you are not pushing online ordering right now, you're not prepared for what's coming. I know I see a lot of you on here and some of you have older clientele and you say, well, our customers want to come into the restaurant, all that. That's great. Your customers are also dying. As they get older, you need to replace them with younger clientele, and the younger clientele is ordering online. And if you're interested in discussing with us at a later time or scheduling a meeting as to how you can really drive online ordering, we have some really good case studies and some really good ways to help you drive online ordering. And you're using zero-tipped employees while maintaining sales. Okay. Loyalty programs. You say, well, how does loyalty program help us when minimum wage is high? Loyalty program builds your email marketing database. Your email marketing database can then help you drive additional business to your restaurant. Get your guests that are already coming there 2 or 3 times a month to come 4 or 5 times a month. All right. I had a conversation with our merchant, has 5 locations with us in Michigan, couldn't make this call due to a family emergency this morning. But we were on the phone doing our quarterly call last week, and I said to him, how are sales? Have you looked at sales this year over last year? And his response to me was, sales are very flat. They're right where they where we expected them to be this year. And I said, sales are flat. He said, yes, sales are flat, but they're not dipping, Dwayne. I said, if sales are flat, you have less customers coming in the door this year than you did last year. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, prices have gone up. You've raised your menu prices at least once between last year and this year, correct? I said, yeah. So if prices are up and sales are flat, that means you have less customers coming in. Your restaurant will be dead in 3 years if we don't solve for the customers coming in portion of the equation. And it clicked. And we're now launching a loyalty program, getting their email marketing database growing, and they're now looking at metrics a little bit differently. We need to look at metrics on a customer count level instead of a sales level because they're directly correlated to each other. And the more customers we can bring in the door, the higher our sales are going to be. And the key to getting customer to come in the door is loyalty program, email marketing, online ordering, getting those incremental sales and those incremental uses at your restaurant. I've been preaching this for years, but you know what? The places that are doing the best in Seattle and Portland are the places that provide a unique guest experience. Your high-end places are still surviving out there, and everybody says, well, our high-end places are surviving because their prices are higher. No, if it were that simple, McDonald's would just make every burger $25. All right. The high-end places are surviving because they have learned how to provide genuine hospitality and a real guest experience. They have learned how to make every guest feel special. They have learned how to make their place memorable for their guests. All right. And if your place isn't memorable, you're forgetful. So I don't know. We'd have a much longer conversation on here if we went through each one of your places and your individual establishments and said, well, here's how to make your place memorable. But we are more than willing to get on calls. Guys, we're not just a point of sale company. We're here as restaurant consultants. And we are more than willing to get on calls to talk about specific use cases and specific ideas for your restaurant. Just reach out. But when I think about a nightclub, and I know most of you aren't in the nightclub business, but the average lifespan of a nightclub is about 2.5 years because they have to reinvent themselves every 2.5 years. Otherwise, the experience is the same. And their guests get bored every couple of years because nothing's different. They go on a Saturday night and they got the same DJ playing and they got the same bartenders behind the bar, or maybe different bartenders doing the same thing. And the experience gets repetitive. All right. In the food service business, we have to find ways to reinvent ourselves without reinventing ourselves every 2.5 years. And a lot of that's through the guest experience. We can sit down with you individually. If you're interested, reach out and design programs that will enhance your guest experience. But a lot of it starts with training. A lot of it starts with hiring the right people that can translate your guest experience and translate your goals as a company to your guests in the most effective way. I know this was very fast, very quick. It was intended to be a very, very much an overview. I would like to open the floor up to questions, either to myself or to Natalie, who we are both on the call. So if you have questions as it relates to the tip law changes and anything we didn't cover, or specific questions about anything we mentioned as it relates to combat. Two things I probably should have put in here. I think today's the last day they can actually fix this before it takes effect. I'd have to, I think today's the last day of the legislative, I don't want to call it legislative process, Natalie, but I think
Session.
Yeah, I think today would be the last day they could actually vote on this and make a difference before it takes effect. So when people say, is it really going to take effect? Yeah, we're done, guys. This is taking effect February 21st, whether we like it or not. The other thing I didn't put in here that may affect some of you, if you are a restaurant that is only open for part of the day, maybe breakfast and lunch, and you're closed for dinner. One of the ways that our restaurants are combating this out west is by setting up ghost kitchens for dinner. And for those of you not familiar with what a ghost kitchen is, it's a separate concept. So I know that Gus is on this call at Uptown Coney, and he might be a bad example, but Nick's Coney would be a better example. They're only open for lunch and dinner. But if they set up a ghost kitchen selling burgers and fries at night, where all they have is a kitchen staff, and DoorDash and Grubhub and all those guys are third-party deliveries, are picking it up and delivering it to customers and not having any dine-in, that's a way that people are combating it. Some of the big guys are doing it. And when I tell you big guys, we found, my family and I, sitting down in Texas, we started ordering from this place called Pardon My Cheesesteak. And they had fabulous cheesesteaks. All right. They're New York style, Philly style cheesesteaks. And all they sold was cheesesteaks, fries, cheese curds, and beverages. Basically, that's your options. And we were ordering from them once a week for, I don't know, probably the last 6-8 months. And a couple weeks ago, our food shows up and it's all in IHOP bags. All it is a ghost kitchen for IHOP. And IHOP is making the food, presenting the food, and nobody knows it's coming from IHOP. Buffalo Wild Wings just started the same thing. If you've seen recently in some markets, and I don't know if you're one of the markets that they're doing this in, but Buffalo Wild Wings started a ghost kitchen concept called Wild Burger. And all they have is 5 or 6 burgers and fries and I think onion rings and beverages. And you go on DoorDash or Grubhub and you see Wild Burger and you order Wild Burger and the burgers are good. And all it is Buffalo Wild Wings sending it out. So, Christina, I saw your question. Reach out to us and we can help you design, market, get it set up, and use your existing equipment. So the best part about a ghost kitchen is you don't need any additional kitchen printers. We can make it all flow through the exact same hardware that you have there. So if that's something that you are interested in, the setup costs are almost zero. We'll do all the graphic design for you. We'll do all the setup for you, and you just have a monthly, your monthly online ordering subscription, and Chelly, if you're using Chelly for third-party integration, Chelly subscription. So questions, guys? Anything that, maybe we didn't cover that you were expecting, or maybe you'd like to hear, feel free to ask it in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask away.
Hey, Dwayne?
Yes, Mark.
Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yep.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
This question's for Natalie, I think. Natalie, I have a really good friend of mine on the Michigan Restaurant Association board. He's the right chair. And I think that a vote has to go through the Supreme Court, right?
The vote?
Yeah. I mean, to change anything right now, doesn't have to be implemented today because the Supreme Court in Michigan has to get involved with that vote, correct?
Well,
They already did.
they already
No, to change it. I'm saying to change it.
Well, it depends on how they change it and what is involved in the proposed modifications. But
Okay.
there is a less than 0% chance that this is going to be modified before February. So
Yeah,
this
that's
is
what I
going
thought
into,
too.
this is going to go into effect. But for those that are still holding out hope that perhaps this can change in the future. There is potential. Though, I mean, Dwayne did a clear picture of minimum wage, minimum cash wage, tip credit obligations in the coming years. And I can go into more detail if that's needed, but I don't want to be duplicative. It does remain possible that the state legislature and the governor could step in to change these rates and when they take effect. And some legislators have already proposed legislation that would amend minimum wage, tips, overtime standards, along with paid sick leave requirements. Whether the proposals advance or others are introduced, that will remain to be seen. You should monitor the situation and the state labor department's website for future developments. We certainly will keep our customers apprised of changes in the law that will impact you and that are significant impact. Obviously, despite this informational webinar, this is not specific legal advice for each one of you in your own particular situation. So should you require legal advice about an action or actions that you may want to take, please seek out the advice of an attorney to address your specific concern. But yeah, this is definitely going to take effect, but things could change.
And let me give my opinion. I hate to get into political conversations on a webinar like this, but Gretchen Whitmer's term is up in 2026. So you guys will be voting for a new governor in 2026. It is my personal opinion that this law is unlikely to change prior to a new administration coming in, because Whitmer has positioned herself as the governor of the little people. And changing this would position it for her and for the Democratic Party in Michigan as reducing the minimum wage of the little people. If they were to change this and get rid of this escalation to $15 an hour minimum wage for the people that are making, $4, $5, $6, $8 now, it would be a political disaster for the Democratic Party in the state of Michigan, in my opinion. All right. So and essentially that's why it hasn't changed since it was voted in. I mean, most of the political pundits knew the Supreme Court was going to rule on this and knew how they were going to rule, or anticipated how they were going to rule. I mean, Whitmer is a lawyer by career choice and by education. She had an idea of how this was going to be handled by the Supreme Court. And I just don't think there's going to be a political appetite to get this changed before 2026. Maybe if we get a Republican governor and Republican controlling the legislature, there's a chance after that. But if we look at what has happened in Seattle, Portland, parts of California, everywhere where there's been a Democratic majority out west, regardless of the pushback they've gotten from the citizens and from the service industry. The Michigan Restaurant Association's lined up against this. The National Restaurant Association's lined up against this. The pushback has been enormous. And
there was a recent demonstration in the state, in Lansing, also by servers.
Regardless of the pushback that they're getting, there's just not an appetite for reducing minimum wage laws once they're passed. David, you had a question?
Hey, good morning. I just wanted to kind of ask a legal question. Maybe Natalie can help, and this potentially could help deal with some stuff as far as creating different service fees. But when I was in California, I noticed that a lot of restaurants had multiple different types of fees. And I was wondering, kind of like, excise taxes or whatnot, how many different types of taxes or fees can you add, to the point where some of them that I saw were such as recycling fee or eco fee or this fee or that fee. Is that legal? Can restaurants in Michigan apply the same type of name for that fee and just add that on, and you know, a 2% fee for this, a 3% fee for recycling, a whatever 5% fee for that, and then all of a sudden you see like a total of around 10 to 20%. But or does it have to be like labeled service charge? You know, does it have to be labeled, you know, reduction for tip wage charge? You know, like what's
David,
the legality on that?
a restaurant can list any number of surcharges on the bottom of the check that they want to list. Here are the requirements. They have to be fully disclosed. So they should be disclosed on the menu. They should be disclosed on the door. They should be prominently disclosed. And they cannot be discriminatory in any way, meaning clearly you can't only apply them to a certain group of people or based on where they sit. They can also not be discriminatory by payment type. So you cannot say, we're only applying this to credit card transactions, not to cash transactions, because now you're violating Visa's terms and conditions and subject to a $10,000 Visa fine for the first offense and the permanent removal of your ability to accept credit cards for the second and multiple offenses. Like a merchant would be placed on the Visa match list and could not open a credit card processing account anywhere in the U.S. But as long as you are fully disclosing any service fee, you mentioned California, we have places in LA that have 5, 6, you got state sales tax on the bottom, county sales tax on the bottom, LA sales tax on the bottom. You got the hospitality 1.8% hospitality surcharge on the bottom. You've got an 18% service charge for, you know, essentially the old school auto gratuity on the bottom. Like you get a bill in Los Angeles and it might have 7 or 8 surcharges on the bottom. As long as they are disclosed properly and you have the appropriate signage and the appropriate stuff on your menu, and they're not violating any of Visa's terms and conditions or are not discriminatory in any fashion, perfectly legal. Do I think it's the right way to do it? My personal opinion is no. My personal opinion is proper hospitality, loyalty and marketing to drive more sales, ghost kitchens where applicable, and dual pricing for cash and credit are the right ways to combat this, along with menu price increases. And you're going to have menu price increases just because of inflation. Mark? Yeah, another question, Mark?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me, Dwayne?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with Andy at Big Tom. He's got a question. Okay.
Hey guys.
Go ahead.
Andy?
Hello. Listen, no, you know, everything that you're saying is great and everything with, you know, the cash discount. Some of us do it, some of us don't. The service charges are fine and everything. But as a whole, if the restaurant, all of us do not agree or collaborate together to do this, you know, we're going to get backlash. Oh, Andy's doing 20% service charge on his bills. I'm not going to him, you know. So how are we going to get everyone on board to do this together? So there is no issue. There is no problem. We're covered. The customers understand it. They're going to Mark's, they're going to Andy's, they're going to Dave's, they're going to whoever's. And, you know, that's the standard now because of this problem. So
I think that's a great question, and I'm going to answer it. And Natalie is going to laugh at me when I answer this. But I think that collaborating together sounds like a great idea, but could be interpreting as price fixing or any of the various things that violate antitrust and various federal laws. So I'm going to be very careful with what I say. My job is to provide you guys with the information and educate you. And then on an individual level, consult with you as it relates to what's best for your establishment. Now, if what's best for your establishment is also what's best for the next person that I collaborate with individually, and so forth and so on. But I will also say that what's best for Big Tommy's Parthenon might not be what's in the best, and I know Dominic's on here, but what might not be what's best for Andiamo Group. Definitely would not be what's best for Uptown Coney Island. Like, you have different price points in different hours of operation in different needs for everybody's establishment. And I think that while collectively making decisions sounds like a great idea, the answer is different for somebody who charges $6 for 3 eggs and a piece of toast and a piece of bacon than it is for Dominic, who has $250 steaks on his menu and who offers a different guest experience.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, I think that the right answer is schedule some time with me far enough out, meaning give me don't say, hey, I have tomorrow available, because I want to be able to do the research on each one of your individual establishments before I have a meeting with you, so I can come in and be educated on what I think would be the best solution for you and discuss various options that you have. Some of you are limited in kitchen space. A ghost kitchen probably isn't a realistic option because you've got a 400 square foot kitchen and you're having a hard enough time getting food out the window right now. Some of you, Andiamo or Joe Mears Bloomfield has one of the bigger kitchens on the planet and has 6 or 7 KDSs. Maybe a ghost kitchen fits in what they want to do. And I'm not speaking on Dominic's behalf. I'm just using them as an example. So I'd like to educate myself prior to that meeting, and then we can talk more intelligently about it together. Turkish Village. Oh, Christina asked a question in here. In other states who have done this, do you know how many end up closing? In Portland and Seattle, somewhere between 30 and 50% of restaurants closed overnight the day that this law was passed. So when I tell you a high percentage, but when you tell me, and I famously said this during COVID, the Spot On got on a call with me in late March, early April of 2020 when COVID first started, and they said they were in full panic mode. They had just raised, I think, their Series C or Series D fundraising, and their investors were in full panic about all the restaurant shutdowns. And they said, Dwayne, what's your take as a restaurant expert? What's your take on this? And I said to them, National Restaurant Association saying 30% of restaurants are going to shut down overnight because of COVID. My take on this is restaurants haven't upgraded their technology since POS system was invented. 30% of restaurants are going to close, which means 30% are going to open with better operators and need new POS systems. And the other 70% are going to need to upgrade their technology in order to survive COVID. I think this doesn't change that equation. Like, we need to update our operations as restaurant operators, and some of that will be better technology. Some of that will be using the technology we have more effectively, and some of that will be other ways to improve our restaurant and the guest experience. Turkish Village. I don't know who is on from that call.
Hi, that's me. I'm Danielle. I'm here for Eddie Al-Assad.
Hi, Danielle.
Hi. So I had a comment and a question. One, we did the ghost kitchen route, and when the bag arrived with the brand name on it, people were very upset. We got huge backlash for that. We started using plain bags without the brand name because people were giving backlash. Like, we were charging higher prices to accommodate for the extra fees on these tablets. So they were upset, saying, well, I could just order from there and get it for a cheaper price. They're scamming us. So I do suggest not using the same name. And then two, my other question is, we have Coney Island's and upscale restaurant, fine dining. So with the fine dining, can you explain to me the difference between tips and gratuities? Should they be recorded separate? What is the law pertaining to that? Yeah,
so auto gratuities and tips are two very different things in the service industry from an accounting perspective and from a legal perspective. A tip is a voluntary amount that a guest puts on a check that the service staff that served them is entitled to. And those report in and not everybody on this call is a current customer. We have some potential customers on this call, but if you're using Spot On, they report as tips on the payroll detail report. An auto gratuity reports as auto gratuities on the payroll report and is not a tip. Okay. It is
Okay.
treated as a service charge from a mathematical accounting payroll perspective. And what does that mean? That means that in our banquet facilities, this changed for our banquet facilities a number of years ago. It effectively raises their minimum wage. So let me give you the math. If a server works 4 hours, and currently that server is making, I'm just going to use round numbers, $5 an hour.
Mhm.
Okay. And during that 4 hours, they get $100 in auto gratuities. You take that $100, add their $5 an hour of wages in, so that's $120 total dollars. They worked 4 hours. Their wage, their payroll for those 4 hours was $55 an hour. I'm sorry, $30 an hour.
Okay.
All right. So when they apply for unemployment or they get hurt on the job and they need workers' compensation, their unemployment and their workers' compensation is now based upon that higher hourly
Wow.
wage. So we've recommended for a number of years to completely eliminate auto gratuities.
Yeah.
And our banquet facilities, this affected them to the point where if you go book a wedding these days, most wedding facilities don't have an auto gratuity on there anymore. They have a service fee. And they're paying their banquet staff $15-20 an hour and keeping that service fee or only giving a small portion of that service fee to their staff. Because again, as we talked earlier in the webinar, if you call it a service charge, you can put in your employee manual how that service charge is divided. And some of them don't share at all. Some of them give a portion to the kitchen staff and some of them give it. And we're seeing this with online orders right now. Gratuities from online orders. Restaurateurs are now deciding how they want those gratuities handled. And most of the time, a portion of those gratuities from online orders are going to the kitchen staff and a portion are going to the front of the house staff and being divided up in a different fashion than just giving it to the cashier who handles the online order. So I hope that answers your question effectively.
It does. So as far as recording it, as far as reporting, should we keep the gratuities completely separate from the tips?
They already
as far
do.
as for
In your spot on reporting, they are already separated from the
Yes. For our records, I mean, like, so for our personal spreadsheet, should we keep those separate? Because it is obviously separate, right?
Yes, and we don't
Okay.
ever recommend keeping a separate set of books. So I would just leave your spot on reporting as your
Yeah.
Bible, because if you get audited in any way by Michigan Wage and Hour, they're going to go right to the spot on reporting and don't care about your spreadsheets.
Right, because right now, the way it's set up, it's the first one, that we have gratuities for. So we're right now combining gratuity and tips together to record it for our personal spreadsheet, just so we can see our numbers, but we definitely should keep those separate.
Yes,
Okay, that you answered my question. Thank you so much.
no problem. Mark, did you have another question or did I just not lower your hand?
No, hey, I'm sorry, Dwayne. I promise this is my last one.
Oh, you're fine. We want to get to all of them.
No, you guys are doing great. Honest to God. I mean, fantastic call today. Hey, and I'm with Andy here. We're a little confused on the 548 starting February. I thought it was going to 10.
No, so it's an escalation.
Okay.
So this is the schedule, and I changed the screen to show you the schedule. This is also, if you use that URL that's on the screen, posted on the Michigan Restaurant Association's website. So February, the Michigan minimum wage goes to $12.48, but there is a phase out of the tipped minimum wage. So they didn't want it to impact restaurants all at once.
Right.
So they phase out the tipped minimum wage, or what we call the tip credit. They phase it out over 5 years.
Okay, I see it. Oh, okay. So really, for 3 years, then you're looking at right now, it's only going to max out at $5.99.
No,
Is that correct?
for 1 year, for 1 year, it's $5.99.
Oh,
February.
I'm sorry. I
It's
got it, Dwayne.
$7.97. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. Thank you.
So
I see
right,
it.
I
right
think
now it's
impact-
$3.
Yeah, I got it.
think the impact on it for most of our restaurants in 2025 is minimal. Most of you guys, I think, are paying, what are we scheduling this? $4.80 or something like that right now.
Can't see it, but let me see after.
Yeah, so I think the impact for next year is fairly minimal, but the impact for
$5
'26 is significant. When you're going from $5 to almost $8 an hour, if your labor cost is expected to be, and I'm just using a round number, 30% of sales, to take your wages from $5 an hour to $8 an hour, so raising it $3, you may have to raise, if you do nothing else, you may have to raise menu prices by 30%.
No, I got it. Thanks, Dwayne. Thank you.
Guys, are there any additional questions? So thank you for attending. If you need to reach out to me and you want to talk about any of the things that we discussed on here, feel free. My email is sales@partnersmatter. I know that many of you think that that's not my direct email. That is my direct email. That is the email that is on my phone that I respond to every single day. Feel free to set up, say, hey, Dwayne, when can we meet to discuss some of this stuff? Here's some availability I have for next week. I feel like it's our duty as your partner or your potential partner, for those of you who aren't partners with us yet, to provide you with this type of information and then to guide you through this process, either using our technology or some of this not using our technologies, using some expertise and some industry knowledge that we have. So we want to meet with you. We encourage you to get ahead of this, and we really appreciate your time today. So thank you. And if there's anything we can do, please reach out.